Hey everyone, and welcome to Pre-College Algebra. In this course, we're trying to get you ready for a good college algebra course. Everything that we learn here is pretty fundamental for college algebra, and it should leave you in a good spot to be successful in college algebra. Where we're going to start in this class is talking about integers, operations, and just solving regular equations, regular linear equations, I should say. So here in section 1.1, and we're sort of going from 1.1 all the way through section 1.6 today, we're talking about integers and we're talking about their operations. So the first thing we need to talk about is what is an integer, and then we're going to talk about the ways that we can combine those. All right, so to get to integers, what we need to talk about is what numbers are and what kind of numbers are integers. When you first start thinking about numbers and when you first start learning about numbers as a kid, you talk about the natural numbers. You don't speak of them as the natural numbers, but they're just the counting numbers, numbers that you learn when you're growing up. 1, 2, 3. It's an easy way to start because it's an easy visual. You have 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples. From there, it processes pretty quickly that what if you have no apples? And that extends the natural numbers to the whole numbers when we add a 0. So if you have none of something, you have 0 of something. The next natural extension would be to say, what if I owe someone some apples or owe someone some money, right? That extends us to the integers, which is where we need to be today. The integers contain all of the regular counting numbers that you would normally see as a kid, and 0, and the negative numbers. We're not talking about anything with fractions today. Those would be rational numbers. That's the next step that we'll take. For today, we're focused on integers. Now that we know what an integer is, we can talk about some of the operations on integers. The operations that we're going to look at today are your typical your standard 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And as we start, one thing that you will want for this course is a calculator. We're going to talk later about fluency, but the calculator absolutely helps with that and is going to help you throughout this course. The official calculator for this course is the TI-30 XIIS. If you go and buy one of those calculators, I have a picture of it drawn on a screen later on, and I've got a picture of it in the syllabus, but it's a pretty tall calculator. It's got your operators on the right. So these are the things that we're going to be dealing with today. If you have that calculator, you can go on and pull it out and get it ready to use. If you can do the things without the calculator, that's even better. We're going to start without the calculator, and then we'll incorporate it in more and more as we go. All right, with addition. So we're going in order of the things that we saw on the last screen. With addition, when you add a positive integer to anything, it's going to increase the value. That means if we start with a number, it's going to shift that number to the right on the number line. So for example, if I have 2 plus 5, I'm going to start with 2. And I'm going to increase that value. I'm going to move it to the right by 5. So I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I end at 7. So 2 plus 5 equals 7. These are facts that you should memorize. Negative 3 plus 5. If you need a negative number on your calculator, you can't use this minus sign. That minus sign is strictly for subtraction. If you need a negative number on your calculator, you have to use this negative button. It's to the left of the equal sign. So when you type this in your calculator, you're going to hit that negative button, then the 3, and then plus 5. On the number line, what that looks like is negative 3, and we're increasing it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll end up right here at 2. You should verify that in your calculator. Negative 3 plus 5 equals 2. 7 plus negative 8. The same thing on the calculator. We're going to say on the calculator 7 plus, hit the negative sign. Remember that's this sign here. Negative 8. If we're adding a negative number, what that's going to do is that it's actually going to decrease the value. We're adding a number, it's going to decrease the value. So 7, we're not going to increase by 8. We're going to decrease 7 plus negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we should end up here at negative 1. Verify that on the calculator. Negative 2 plus negative 7. Take a second, try and figure this one out. In about 3 seconds, I'm going to clear this cover. And this is what you should end up with, is negative 9. Started at -2 and shifted to the left, -7. Subtraction is the inverse of addition. That means it does the opposite thing. So when you subtract a positive from anything, a positive integer from anything, it's going to decrease the value. So for example, 5 minus 3, I start with the 5. I'm going to decrease the value by 3, so decrease it by 1, 2, 3, and I should end up with a 2. Now on your calculator, that minus sign, when we're talking about actual subtraction, 5 minus 3, that is the subtraction button. You can't hit the 5 negative 3. You have to hit 5 times divided by plus minus. This is the minus sign. 5 minus 3. This over here is the negative sign, and the minus sign is right here in your standard 4 operations. 5 minus 3 does equal 2. 4 minus 10. Think about it for 3 seconds. If I start with 4 and move to the left by 10, I should end up at -6. 3 minus -5. All right, we're having to use both of our buttons on the calculator this time. We can think about it though. Anytime you have a double negative, it's the same thing as a positive. So 3, start with 3, minus -5 is decreasing by -5, means we're actually increasing by 5. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We should end up at 8. This right here can be written just like it is, or it can be written with a parentheses, 3 minus -5. They're both the same exact thing. You should, again, verify this in your calculator. Make sure that you can do 3 minus -5 and get positive 8. 3 minus -5, you should get positive 8. -4 minus -6, try it. You should get positive 2. Integer multiplication. Okay, so we've done addition, we've done subtraction, now we'll do multiplication, and then we'll talk about division, and then we'll actually also talk about exponents. So multiplication, all it is repeated addition. So 3 times 5, for example, is 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. That's 5 3's added. That's equal to 15. We don't have to actually type this whole thing in the calculator. We have a multiplication button. 3 times 5, these again are just facts. We should memorize as many of these facts as we can. 4 times 3 is the same as 3 4s, which is equal to 12. So 4 times 3 is 12. 6 times 0 is the same thing as 6 written 0 times. So that's equal to just 0. All right, now's a good time to talk about fluency. People in English literature writing always talk about fluency, and that is the ability to look at a slide, read it accurately, quickly, and absorb the information, right? So mathematics works the same way. You want some fluency so that you don't have to stop and think and stop and think and stop and type in your calculator. You want to memorize some of these facts so that as you're looking at a problem, it just flows. That's what fluency is a flow state. You want to be able to flow and read the math without having to stop and think about every single little piece. So memorizing facts like addition, subtraction, multiplication, memorizing some of those basic facts is a very good tool to help you along your math journey, not just in pre-college algebra, but for the rest of math. One tool that you can use to get good at these multiplication facts, if you go online and look up times tables, some people remember this from elementary school and middle school. These timetables are really good at helping you memorize those facts. There are times tables for addition, multiplication, division. I would go through and try and do some of those and memorize some of those facts. It will make you more fluent. All right, another operation is division. On your calculator, it's this button. There is, if you see this symbol as well, it's the same thing as division. Division is the inverse of multiplication, so instead of having multiples of something, it's splitting it into multiple parts. Now the parts do have to be equal. So for example, 12 divided by 3, can we divide 12 into 3 equal parts? In fact, 4 3 times is equal to 12. So then 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Again, we do have the button on the calculator, so you can try that. 18 divided by 6 should equal 3, and that's because 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. That's 6 equal parts that add up to 18. One very important thing in math, and this is not going to stop when you get to college algebra, is that you cannot divide by 0. This is going to come back and haunt us a little bit later when we talk about rational equations and rational expressions. This is something that you should memorize now and never forget, is that you cannot divide by 0. So anytime you try to divide by 0, you're just going to say that is undefined. 12 divided by 0 is undefined, 0 divided by 0 is undefined, 1 divided by 0 is undefined, any negative number divided by 0 is undefined. You cannot divide by 0. The last operation we're going to talk about today is exponents. And just like multiplication's repeated addition, exponents are just repeated multiplication. So 3 to the 4th is 3 multiplied by itself 4 times. So 3 to the 4th is 81. Now, on your calculator, if you want to get the exponent, on the left side, there's a little caret button. It's a little up arrow. And the way that you would type this in the calculator is you would say 3 up arrow 4. And that should give you 81. 5 squared, you could say 5 up arrow 2. Should give you 25. If you do anything to the 0 power, you're just going to get 1. It doesn't matter what you do to the 0 power, you're just going to get 1. The only exception to that is you're not going to do 0 to the 0. But you could do a negative number to the 0 and still get 1. Now, if you want to do a negative number to a power, when we use our calculator, it's important to use parentheses. So if I said negative 5 to the 0, I'm going to have to put that in parentheses if I really truly want the whole negative 5 to be to the 0. So in the calculator, I'm going to say parentheses negative 5 caret 0 and still get a 1. Now, those parentheses symbols are in this area of the calculator, just slightly under the screen. Now that you've seen each operation, it's important to use them in the right order. We have to use them in the correct order when we combine them. You're typically not going to see a problem that just has addition or just has subtraction. A lot of times, or most of the times, they will be in combination. Now, the way to tell what order you're going to do is you're going to say PEMDAS. PEMDAS, most people have seen this in middle school again or high school math. And here's what PEMDAS stands for. It's a mnemonic device. P is for parentheses, E is for exponents, M and D are for multiplication and division, AS is for addition and subtraction. That's PEMDAS. Now, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, it doesn't mean that we have to do multiplication before division. It's just whichever one we get to first. So if I had 2 divided by 2 times 5, I'm going to do the division first because that's the ones I get to first in the problem. Multiplication and division are as important as each other. Addition, subtraction are as important as each other. So if I had 5 minus 7 plus 3, I'm going to do the subtraction first because that's what I get to first. Addition and subtraction are equally as important. Here are some examples. This first one on the left. If I try and use PEMDAS here, what parentheses really means is do the things inside the parentheses. So here I don't have anything inside that parentheses to do, which means actually I can just get rid of the parentheses. If there's nothing inside the parentheses to do and there's not an exponent on it, then I can just get rid of the parentheses here. So this is actually negative 12 divided by negative 4 minus 4 times 5 plus 4 to the third. The next thing up is exponents. I see an exponent here, so in the calculator type in 4 to the third. 4 to the third should give you 64. All right, next up is multiplication and division, whichever ones we get to first. If I'm just reading left to right, here's some division, right? Negative 12 divided by 4 in the calculator is negative 3. We're going to stay on any step until we do everything, right? So we're still looking for multiplication division as long as it's there. There's some multiplication. So negative 3 minus 20. There's no more multiplication and division, so we can move on to the last step, which is AS, addition, subtraction. Again, left to right. So here's our first addition or subtraction. Negative 3 minus 20 is negative 23. And here's some more addition, subtraction. That adds to positive 41. Here's another problem. Now, when we have fractions, what we want to do, we're still going to follow PEMDAS, okay? We're still going to follow the same order of operations. The one thing we need to take into account is really what's happening is the top is a group of things and the bottom is a group of things. Brackets and parentheses mean the same thing in this context. And so we have parentheses inside parentheses. We're going to work from the inside out, okay? I should have said back here, well, let me not say that. We'll just keep working. So inside the top parentheses, right? First is parentheses. We want to get rid of the parentheses as much as we can. Inside the top parentheses, I have no exponents. Inside the bottom parentheses, I have no exponents, so we're good there. Multiplication and division up top. Multiplication and division. So I'm going to start with this multiplication. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Oh, man. I've already broken my own rule. I had things that I could do inside of this parentheses. Let's go all the way back. I'm sorry. So first, parentheses. Inside any parentheses, do we have something that we can do? Yes. We can do 5 minus 8 in that parentheses. 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now, in the context that we have here, we still have parentheses. Dropping the parentheses in this case, to drop the parentheses, we're going to have to multiply 2 parentheses negative 4. This right here is the same thing as 2 times negative 4. Negative 2 parentheses negative 3 is the same thing as negative 2 times negative 3. So the next step, there's no exponents. We're going to multiplication. I'm going to multiply these. And in the same step, to save space, I'm going to multiply those. We're going to get better and better at this. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. On the bottom, we have negative 8 minus 5 minus 3. There's no multiplication and division on the bottom, so I'm not going to fool with it. Next up, addition and subtraction. On the top, negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. On the bottom, negative 8 minus 5 minus 3 is negative 16. And negative 2 over negative 16 is positive 1/8. All right, how did I get from here to here? Here's what we're doing. We're gonna rely on the calculator as we need to, and especially with fractions, we're gonna rely on the calculator. All right, you have your calculator. We got to this point, negative 2 over negative 16. That's the same thing as negative 2 divided by negative 16. The fraction bar is the same thing as a division. Negative 2 divided by negative 16, you type that in the calculator, and you get positive 0.125. We want that to be 1/8. So what we're going to do on the calculator is we're going to hit, there's a second button, and it's blue. And very close to that button, sort of down and to the right, there's a F-D button. That means fraction to decimal. All right, so once you get your 0.125, you hit second, F-D, and hit enter, and it's going to convert that into a fraction 1/8. You should practice that as many times as possible. So in your calculator, you have 0.125, second F-D, hit enter, you should get 1/8. Here's another one to test. If I had 0.75, and I want that into a fraction and not a decimal, most of the times for this class, unless it specifically says to write a decimal, we're going to use fractions. So 0.75, to convert that into a fraction, we do second F-D, hit equals. You should get 3/4 in your calculator. Get as many reps with that as you can. Practice that as many times as you can. We're going to have another opportunity here on this next slide. All right, now that we know the basic operations, we could talk about algebraic expressions. We are going to continue doing PEMDAS, okay? Algebraic expressions are things with variables, x, y, z's. They do not have an equal sign. If they have an equal sign, it's an equation, and then you would be trying to solve for a variable. Here, we're not necessarily trying to solve for a variable, figure out what x is, figure out what y is. And next class especially, we're going to be simplifying expressions. We're just trying to combine things, and today specifically, we're just trying to evaluate these expressions. So this is an example of an expression. It has numbers and variables. There's no equal signs. When we evaluate expressions, that means that we know the values of the variables. So if we're given, evaluate the expression, we're given x equals 5 and y equals 3. For this expression, the same one as on the last page, what we need to do is sub in a 5 and a 3, and every time we evaluate, we're going to sub in using parentheses. It's very important that you use parentheses. 3, 5, plus 2, 3. Notice I put in a 5 for x, I put in a 3 for y. Now 3 times 5 is 15. Using PEMDAS, we need to do our multiplication. 2 times 3 is 6. 15 plus 6 is 21. This we could sub directly into the calculator. And we could also get this. Now, in the calculator, again, it's very important that when you evaluate, you sub things in using parentheses. This should be our last one here. Oh no, it's the next to last one, I'm sorry. So 3z minus 2x over y, we want to evaluate. When we evaluate, we want to get a single number answer for x equals 5, y equals 3, z equals 12. Take a second and see what you can do here. So first, we sub in our variables using parentheses. Anytime you need to pause this video, do so please. Then we're using PEMDAS, so parentheses first. There's no exponents. There's nothing to do within the parentheses. There's no exponents. Next we can do the multiplication. So 3 times 12 and 2 times 5. The next step in PEMDAS is addition and subtraction. 36 minus 10. 26 over 13. Type that in your calculator. 26 divided by 13. You should get 2. This time we actually got a very nice number. We don't have to do the second f-d because we didn't get a decimal. We're going to continue to do more of these next class, and we're actually specifically going to talk about expressions when we have these specific properties. Expressions have properties and integers have properties. We're also going to try and extend to the rational numbers and maybe the real numbers eventually. But the properties that we're going to talk about are the associative, commutative, and distributive properties. So in the meantime, what you should do is take some time and just think about what those words mean. The word associative, the word commutative, the word distributive. And we'll talk more about those in the next lesson.